This is a Reichert 255, Xcel 255. This slit lamp is becoming fairly common globally. There may be different names on it. This happens to be a Reichert, but there's other brand names, and but they have a similar construction. And getting inside here when there's issues, sometimes may be a little challenging to figure out. In order to get everything apart, you would have to loosen Allens just about everywhere. Yeah, to here, here, and in the front you have one here. There's a bearing behind here. It's the detent for rotating, and to get this top half off, you have to loosen these. All these Allens need to be loosened to be able to take it apart. You don't necessarily have to take these off your prism cover. They can stay on. Once you have that off, then you can take the rest of your scale off. Then you can take the body out. This is your light assembly. Now in here you have a 4 mm, excuse me, I think that's a 3 mm ball bearing that detents right here. There's a little groove, and that ball bearing will detent your straight position on here. Once you have this, if you turn it over, there are a couple of Allen screws. And once you release those, there's 2 pins that are holding it together to hold it in place. You just have to work it apart. That exposes your slit blades, and you can see the mechanism for operating the slits. And then you have your diaphragms under here, and underneath is the filter wheel. You have your filters and your diaphragm wheels. So you can take this apart to clean this side, and then this side of your filters. You have to go in between your diaphragm to clean the filters, so be careful that you don't mess up the edge of your diaphragms. It's delicate. And oftentimes these slits, they get loose, and thinking that it's because the grease has just gotten too weak, too old. I don't know. But on this one, I took the handles off by screwdriver on each end, and then I was able to push the shaft back and forth a little bit. Could only go so far, and then I was cleaning both edges of the shaft, and then I put new grease in there, and I put a little bit of grease on this cam in here, and then when I'm putting back together, I'm not sure how they do it in the factory, but they must have some kind of jig that they can center it closed. Somehow they know where the center is, maybe the space in between, whatever. But when I measure it, it's about 9.5 millimeters from the edge of here to the side, on both sides. That's pretty close, I think. 9.5 millimeters, not quite 10. I guess that gets you in the ballpark. There may be another way of just centering it close, and then if you were to loosen this Allen, you might be able to move it back and forth to get this more centered between the two halves. That's one way of doing it when this is apart. Now there's another way. Once you have it together, there's this access window that you can get to this Allen, but it can only be accessed when it's turned, so that where the access hole is. But when you turn it, the slits are automatically open. So you could loosen that, move it one way or the other, but then you would have to close them to see if they were. You would have to operate them open and close to see if they were actually centered on your diaphragms. You would choose a diaphragm where you could see the space that was opening if it was equal. So you will have to work with that, and so will I, to make sure that's centered. Either getting it the best you can centered while it's here in this position, and your handles and your knobs tight. And when you've got to hold these two knobs tight while you're tightening your axle, your cap nuts, and that gives it the tension. There's only one spring washer on the right side, and that's the only tension. So you have to squeeze the handles while you're tightening the screws. So it's not that easy to get tension on here. And what happens sometimes is that when you're squeezing it, it moves the center of your slit assembly. So that's why this little Allen is accessible, so you can move the centering of it. So I'm still learning about it, and there's probably a simpler trick, and if you know it, then please make a video and show the rest of us. But that's what I'm learning, and put everything back together, and just remember, you've got your you've got your 3mm, or yes, I think it's a 3mm bearing that goes in here for the detent, and there's a spring. There's a screw, a spring, and a bearing for your detent. And then put it all back together. Hope that can help you like it might help me to remember. When it comes time to putting everything back together, you can put your halves together. Remember there's 2 pins that will go in, and there's only one way it will go in. Put your 2 Allens in. Everything is clean, just a small film of grease on this outer rim that's going to be contacting this rim. Everything's clean, goes back together, falls into place. Then you can put your scale back on, and then you can put your upper portion back on, and we're going to be tightening the Allen where this detent is. We're going to put that in. You have to work everything around till it falls in place, and then we're going to tighten this Allen until it starts to engage the detent. Make sure that bearing was in there, and then you can start turning it to see when it starts to detent, and you can vary the amount of tension on there by loosening or tightening that Allen. When it's time to start lining everything up, it's better to go ahead and put it on the slit lamp. And since you have your detent tension already formed here, when you put the top stack on, now it's time to find your 90 degrees, and go ahead and put your focus rod in, put your mag changer on to 16, and look through your binocular head until and center then the assembly, looking through your eyepieces with the largest diaphragm, and turn your whole assembly until it's centered in your view as you're looking through. As long as you've already got your head aligned with equal sides on both sides of your focus rod, and that's all tight, now you can turn your light assembly to be the center in your view. And once you have it centered, then you can start tightening up your alignment. as you're looking through your eyepieces, as it's centered, go ahead and start tightening up these 3 side Allens, 2 over here and 1 over here. Hold it in place. You're holding the base, because now this is all, it's all connected, because this is already on the detent of 90, so now you're turning the whole assembly on the bottom, and then when you've got it centered through your view, then you can start tightening these 2 Allens, these 3 Allens, 1, 2, and 3, and alternate them until it stays in place. Snug them up, and now you're at 90 degrees. And then to get your scale that's still loose, there's some space in here. I'm going to just get some cardstock and put it in there just to raise up on both sides. On both sides to lift up the scale so that you have your spaces underneath it, because that's just what we're going to do. We're going to put our space on the bottom. And since we're already centered, all we'd have to do now is turn our scale to 90, and then we can tighten the 2 Allens on our scale right here. And then now everything is 90 degrees in place. We can take our little spacers and check everything. See if everything still lines up. If you need to tweak it a little bit, you can loosen these Allens on this cover, and you might get some movement. It's possible that they will try to go back to their original position. So if you might have to take these off and file its original spot down so that it doesn't pull it in the same spot. And then you can do some minor adjusting, centering up and down, left and right a little bit, and then you can tighten these Allens on your cover. If you're looking through your viewfinder and you find that your slits are still not quite centered, well, you're going to have to go through here. And that's on another video, where you take that off and find where the Allen is, loosen it, and then you can push it one way or the other to center the slits, tighten it, and then look through your viewfinder and determine if that actually is the center. And that's a little bit of a process, because you have to keep turning to different adjustments to find out exactly what is centered. So it's a little bit of work. It's not easy. These, to me, are not easy to align. But that just might be because I don't have enough experience doing it. But you probably can learn some other things by working on them. So keep learning and make a video or something and pass it on to the rest of us. Thanks.